After the terrible October 7th attacks, Israel is facing a challenge it has never faced before. How can we celebrate Yom Ha'atzmaut, our Independence Day, when we are filled with so much sadness and pain? Is it possible for us to celebrate the birth of our nation while we are mourning the deaths of so many of us? I'm Yair Pinto, and this is My State, a program about current events, my belief in God, and my journey in the Holy Land. And this is a special edition for Israel's Independence Day. As I walk these streets, I'm reminded of the rich history and strength of the Israeli people. Tonight, we celebrate Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israel's Independence Day. Since 1948, on the 5th of Iyar in the Hebrew calendar, Israelis have celebrated the miracle of the establishment of the modern state of Israel. Growing up in Israel, Yom Ha'atzmaut was always one of the most fun and exciting days of the year. The celebrations would start the night before, as soon as the sad Yom HaZikaron, our Memorial Day, ended. The sudden change between sadness to happiness was always a bit strange, but it also reminded us of the sacrifice that made our independence possible. As a child, I remember the excitement of staying up late, roaming the streets with my friends, and feeling the special energy in the air. The streets would be transformed, every corner filled with music, laughter, and dancing. Stages would be set up for live shows, and the smell of delicious food would be everywhere. One of my best memories is of the traditional Israeli barbecue, or al ha'esh. Families and friends would gather in parks, beaches, or even under balconies, grilling meats and vegetables, and enjoying the simple pleasure of being together. There's something special about these barbecues that just capture the Israeli spirit, the warmth, the joy in the simple things of life. And of course, no Yom Ha'atzmaut celebration would be completed without the Israeli flag. Blue and white would be everywhere, hanging from windows, on cars, even painted on people's faces. As a child, I remember the pride I felt waving my own little flag, feeling connected to something bigger than myself. On a day that is supposed to be filled with joy, Simchat Torah, a holiday that literally means rejoicing with the word of God, thousands of armed Hamas terrorists broke through the large parts of the Gaza security fence using tractors, RPGs, and explosives, and invaded southern Israel. At the same time, Hamas terrorists in Gaza fired thousands of rockets towards Israeli towns and cities, used motorized paragliders to fly over the fence, and others tried to invade from the sea, aiming for Israel's Zikim beach. The terrorists split up and made their way to a number of Israeli towns and IDF bases around Gaza. And that's when the killing started. The terrorists invaded the towns, shooting everything in sight. They broke into people's homes, shooting, burning, doing unimaginable things to others. Over 1,300 civilians were killed, and over 200 were kidnapped. Hamas terrorists briefly took control of about 10 Israeli towns, terrorizing and brutalizing the residents. I'll never forget the images that started coming through on that day. The streets of Israel were now scenes of unimaginable horror and cruelty. At the same time, more terrorists attacked the Nova Music Festival, which was taking place nearby. When the alarm sounded, scared partygoers rushed to escape, but many couldn't get away. The terrorists shot at the thousands of civilians who came from all over the world to celebrate peace through music. They killed hundreds and did unimaginable things to women and the people of the party. 260 bodies were later found in the area of the festival, most of them belonging to young men and women, innocent young people, full of life and promise, killed in an instant. In the days and weeks that followed, as the full size of the attack became clear, Israel was in a state of shock and grief unlike anything we had experienced before. The pain was raw, the loss unbearable. In a small country like Israel, nearly every single person was directly affected. Everyone knew someone who had been killed, hurt, or kidnapped, or someone who knew someone that such horrible thing had happened to them. The state of Israel had never faced such a big planned attack on the Gaza border. Many lives were lost, not only during the first attacks, but also during the long, bloody battles to take back the towns and bases around Gaza. When our forces were finally able to go back into the towns, they were faced with scenes of unimaginable cruelty. I remember the stories that came out afterwards, stories of incredible bravery, of soldiers who risked everything to save civilians, of ordinary people who became heroes in the face of horror, but also stories of unbelievable loss and sadness. Baby beds and carriers were found covered in blood. Families were found holding each other, dead. October 7, 2023 will forever be remembered as the darkest day in Israel's modern history. A day when the evil that we had always known existed, the hatred that had always been directed towards us, showed itself in the most brutal and real way possible. It was a reminder of how easily life can be taken, of the price we pay for living here. In the face of such horror, the question weighs heavy on every Israeli heart. How can we celebrate Yom Ha'atzmaut, Independence Day, at a time like this? How can we find it in ourselves to express joy when joy was taken away in such a horrific way? For many, the very idea of celebration feels not just wrong, but impossible. I think about the scripture, how can we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land? As is written in Psalms 137, verse 4, for indeed, the Israel we knew before October 7th feels like a foreign land now. The innocence, the sense of society, the simple joys, they all seem to belong to a different time, a different place. And yet, even in the darkest of times, rays of light appear. In the days and weeks following the attack, amidst the grief and the shock, something else began to surface, a sense of unity, of togetherness, of shared purpose, unlike anything I had experienced before. Across the country, people came together to support each other in any way they could. Volunteers flooded to the affected areas to help with the cleanup and rebuilding efforts. Blood donation centers were overwhelmed by the response. Support hotlines were set up and people gave their time to listen, to comfort, to be there for complete strangers. There were moments of incredible humanity, stories of Arabs and Jews working side by side to clear rubble, of secular and religious Israelis coming together in prayer, of people opening their houses to house those who had lost everything. And in the ongoing days of military operations against Hamas, the country came together in support of our soldiers. Care packages were sent, prayers were said, candles were lit. Usual disagreements within the Israeli society seemed to melt away, replaced by a sense that we were all in this together and that we would get through this together. In a way, it was a reminder of the very essence of being Israeli, the sense that in times of crisis, we put aside our differences and unite, that we are a family, bound not just by a shared history, but by a shared future. And perhaps it is in this spirit of unity that we can find a way to mark Yom Ha'atzmaut, Independence Day, this year. Perhaps even as we grieve, even as we struggle with unthinkable losses, we can find ways to come together to draw strength from each other. Because the truth is, the story of Israel, the story of the Jewish people, is one of finding light in the darkness, of keeping going against all odds, of choosing life, choosing hope, even when it seems impossible. And so, even in this year of pain, we will mark Yom Ha'atzmaut not with the usual parties and festivals, but with a quiet determination, with a humble gratitude for what we have, for what we've fought for. The traditional torch lighting ceremony at Mount Herzl will be split across 12 cities affected by the attacks of the terrorist organization Hamas. The fireworks will be canceled, the dancing quieter, but the act of gathering, of remembering, of honoring our independence and those who paid the ultimate price for it, that will continue. Because even in our darkest hour, Israel survives. The dream of generations who prayed for hundreds of years, L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem, and who fought for it and paid for it in blood, lives on. And so, we will stand together, grieve together, and then, slowly, carefully, we will begin to rebuild together. This Yom HaAtzmaut, Independence Day, we will remember that our independence must be cherished, protected, and never taken for granted. We will remember those we've lost and honor their memory by continuing to build the country they fought for. On a personal level, I find comfort in the knowledge that God cries with us in our pain, that He's present in our suffering. In the book of Psalms, King David, no stranger to grief and despair, writes, "Weeping may stay for the night, but rejoicing comes in the morning." This is in Psalms 35. It's a reminder that even the darkest night eventually gives way to dawn, that pain, no matter how deep, is not permanent, that there is always hope, always the possibility of healing and new beginnings. And so, as we mark this Yom HaAtzmaut, Independence Day, let us remember that the story of Israel is still being written. To all those watching who stand with Israel in our time of need, we ask for your prayers. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray for the families of those who have lost loved ones, for the injured, for those still held captive. Pray for our soldiers, who even now are defending our borders, our homes, and our lives. Pray for our leaders for wisdom and courage in the face of impossible choices.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.